It's 2 years into your strategic plan and you're trying to find out if you're making progress towards that goal. So in this video, we're going to talk about how can you track whether you're achieving a goal that has been given a timeline of 4 years or 5 years or 2 years, depending on the plan. Because the whole thing is this: most organizations choose to do 2-year plans, 3-year plans, or 5-year plans. That has been my personal experience. So during the year, what most of the organizations do or businesses do, they just basically come up with like a work plan or like a plan of what they're going to implement during the year, with the ultimate goal of that over the period of time of implementing the things they do in the small periods of 1 year, they'll actually be able to get the 5-year goal. So in this example, which we're going to play around with, we're going to look at a goal that has to do with paper reduction, because right now I see a lot of conversations online that have to do with reducing your carbon footprint. So the question becomes, what are you doing intentionally on the ESG side to reduce on your carbon footprint? So as an example, so here we are talking about an initiative that maybe an organization has come up with and is to reduce paper usage. So in this example, I'm looking at someone choosing a goal of reducing paper usage by 60% over a period of 4 years. So as you can see, I've already done the math for you. So it's a goal of reducing over that. Okay, I wonder if the reflection is actually working. Okay, that's fine. All right. The first thing that we need for this particular example is this: you need a baseline. The baseline is the biggest thing, because the whole thing is, if you're going to reduce over a period of 4 years for this example, we need to know where are we coming from as an absolute number. And then the second question is, if we reduce by 60, how much should we be reducing by every year, so that over the period of the 4 years we have reduced by the 60%. Okay, so for easy numbers right now, to reduce by 60%, I've taken an example of like the baseline being 1,000. So let's say using 1,000 reams of paper. Okay, so if it's 1,000 reams of paper and you're trying to reduce it to, over the period of time, to 400, because we're reducing by 60%, which is 600, then the next thing becomes to distribute the 600 over the 4 years. Distributing it over the 4 years means this: you reduce it by 1,150 in the first year, reduce it by 300 in the second year from the 1,000, which is the baseline. In the third year, it's going to be to reduce it by 450 and then by 600 in the third year, meaning we've reduced paper usage over the period by 600 reams over the period. So then the question becomes, what initiatives are you going to make that this dream becomes a reality? Okay, so I've already mapped that out and this is what it looks like. So right now we are saying we're reducing from 1,000, all right, we're coming from 1,000 to 400 over a period of 4 years. Okay, so we're thinking that in year 1, if we come up from the 1,000, which is this, by 150, we are hoping that we should be having numbers of printing that are going to the 850 range. Year 2, same thing, from 1,000 we should be reducing cumulatively to 300, hoping that by the time we measure again, we're coming from the 1,000 to 700. Year 3, coming from the 1,000, we're reducing by 450 to 550. Same thing for year 4, coming from the 1,000, hoping that you have reduced your paper usage to 400, meaning that you have reduced effectively by the 600 over the whole period. So that is the easiest way that you actually can do it. So then the question becomes, how do you track progressively if you're getting to that goal? Okay, so that means that when we come in year 1, we are measuring ourselves against 850. In year 2, we're measuring ourselves against 700, 550, and 400. So what you would effectively have to measure would be, how far are you from the goal of the target, which is the target. Right now the target is this in absolute terms. But think about things to do with like paper reduction, or which things that actually do come with human behavior as part of it. On the mathematics side, you just do cumulative because the mind understands accumulation. But in reality, that's not how things work. For example, if you say I want to reduce weight by this much, you cannot say I'm going to reduce weight by 10 kilos, I should reduce by 1 kilo every month until I get to the 10. So what happens normally is compounded effect, because we're using that time like between the actions you take and the result, and most of it comes with the compounding. What would I call compounding? Compounding would be, as a small example for weight loss, a person says I want to lose 10 kilos, and then you find yourself you've gone to the gym consistently over like a month, and then you look and see you've only reduced by a small margin. But then the thing comes that the more consistent you are with the actions that you take, you'll find that you can actually have like drastic changes which are not using that accumulation of the distribution you've made of let's say like 1 kilo per month. No, you just find yourself with a certain month that comes and you just have lost like 4, but you find that the 4 will have shown that you have not made any reductions over like 2 months, 3 months, and then maybe like in the 5th month you can just lose like 5 kilos all of a sudden. You're like, how did that happen? So the same thing would happen for this. Right now we are assuming linear progression, but reality does not work on linear progression. So what do? We assume the linear, then to account for things like compounding effects, what do? You now create a range around the target for the year. So as an example, I can say in year 1 we said it's 850, right? We're coming from 1,000 to 850. So the question comes that if I come in year 1 and I'm to say how much paper did we use? How much paper did we use in year 1? Now, to compare and see how far we are off the goal, we'll say the goal is 850. Okay? Then we'll get what is the absolute figure that we got this year. And then we'll say, we'll create a target and say we want that when we come to the end of the year to measure, we can measure a deviation from the target. So we're going to be asking ourselves, what's the deviation from the 850? So you can see that. So right now you're looking at what's the deviation from the 850 in year 1? What's the deviation from the year 2 goal? What's the deviation from the year 3? What's the deviation from the year 4? That's the only logical way that you can actually see if you're making progress towards it. And in this example, I'm going to map it out and then I'm going to show it. So I'm just going to pause this video and then just come back and after I've done the computation. All right, now we are back. We are back to see how to now measure ourselves. How far off the goal are we, or are we on the goal? So the question at the point in time, for example, here we said we are in year 1, right? Let's say like we're in year 2 and we expected to reduce by 700, okay? So the question becomes, if it's at year 2 and I came to measure at year 2, I ask myself one question. The first question says this is the year's goal. The first question I say here is, did you hit the goal? Okay, and if it's a yes, you get full 100%. Okay, now that is how you would do it. Okay, and now what happens if you don't? Then if no, the question becomes, how far off the target are we? Okay, that's basically the question. And then if you say how far off the target are we, then you ask yourself what is acceptable behavior and what is not. So in this example, we are saying that if you have 10% as the deviation away from the target, you can say that is acceptable, right? Then if it is anything above 15%, it's moderate, and anything above 15% is unacceptable. So that is how you actually can lay it out in like a gradual manner, and then you find ways of either position yourself in such a way that you either have a penalty or maybe dig out and see why I want to be able to hit the goal, or maybe find exactly which areas do the most high paper consumption and then find ways of actually getting it to reduce. And that is the easiest way that I've found myself to, when you actually do have measures that have a timeline and you want to be able to track whether you're achieving the goal year on year. So for example, in this case, if the goal for year 2 was 700 and we came and found out that we've been able to, the actual usage of paper in year 2 is 800, for example. It's, let's say, say I'm seeing the actual for the year, let's say, is gonna be, I'm looking for simple math right now. The actual for the year is 600. So the question becomes, have we reduced by 700? No, we reduced by 600. So the actual is 600. So then you're asking yourself, how far off the mark is the 600? And that's the bigger question. If the actual is 750, the question becomes, did we reduce paper by 700? And then it's, the actual is 750. That means yes. So you get the full 100. So that when the 600 comes through is when you're like, we haven't reduced by as far as we wanted to. And then you can do the math behind that, see whether you penalize the people or find interventions that actually can get you to the goal. And with that, I think I've been able to cover how to get a 5-year goal, narrow it down and see your progression towards the goal, especially if you have a span of like 4 to 5 years for the goal. And if you're interested in doing measurement criteria for your business, that's what I do. And you can basically come in the, just comment down below. I can actually come and through and help. You can actually also book a call with me. And if you like this video, just comment if it makes sense to you, or if it didn't make sense, then maybe I can do another recap video for that. With that, thanks for coming through. Adios.